Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Liz Quain. For those of you who don't know me very well, I'm a Worldschooling mom of 13-year-old twin girls. We've been traveling for more than 6 years. Anyway, today I wanted to talk a little bit about my favorite travel tools that are so useful for traveling. And I wanted to compare it to traveling in the olden days before we had all these wonderful technology tools. We will be talking about two mobile apps that completely saved the day. And I'll explain to you how difficult it was in the past when I was traveling before we had this wonderful technology. So first, let me share with you some of the tools that I had when I was backpacking back in 1998. As a young woman, I was backpacking around the world for a year, and what I used back then was this, the wonderful travel guide by Lonely Planet. And actually, I probably bought the 1998 version of this one, Western Europe, because that was the first part of the world that I was in. And, you guys have probably seen this before, but, it's full of maps and information. I do love reading it because it has a lot of really good information about like the country, the history, the culture, as well as where to sightsee, where to stay, restaurants, and all that stuff. So it's just chock full of information. But the problem is it's kind of big. And no, I went to 27 countries, but I did not buy 27 books. So what I typically did was I bought a guidebook that covered a region, and then I actually, to save on weight, I would tear out the pages of the places I was not going to go to, or and I wrote in them a lot. I even had a highlighter. So I really beat up these books, and I think even after I finished going to a country, I threw that information away just because I didn't want all that weight. But it was really useful back then. But sometimes they recommend certain hostels or hotels, and but there's only a handful of them depending on the city you're going to. So that's kind of like all the information you have, and the hostel might not even be that nice, but it's in there. So I really relied on this. And then the problem is, just the weight of it, that it wasn't very mobile, and that it was limited. Even though there's a lot of information here, it is limited. Obviously, I used big paper maps. I mean, this is one of Mount Rainier, but it's kind of silly to be standing on a street corner and being lost and looking like a lost tourist, because I feel like I was then a magnet for pickpockets and whatnot. Anyway, but yes, this is what I used, and here's another one. I was trying to find the Southeast Asia one, but I found one that has Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Northern Thailand. So I did have a Southeast Asia one. I did get one in India. Actually, what I would do is, I purchased this when I was in the States, in San Francisco, and I used it. I read a lot of it before the trip, and especially on the airplane. I didn't book accommodations in advance, I don't think. Maybe sometimes I would, but back then it was really hard to make international calls, and I did have an international calling card, but people didn't really email that much. It was hard to find, like if I was staying at the YMCA somewhere or YWCA, it was hard to email them in advance. So often I would just kind of show up. I mean, I think I did have accommodations when I first arrived in Europe, but then I started taking a train around, and I just tried to show up to a new town before noon, if possible. And then I would go with my backpack and go to the hostels or guest houses that they recommended, and I would, just directly show up and try to book. And during the busy season, I remember being in Italy in like July or August, and I had to walk around to several places to finally find a place that had a hostel bed. And I think I even ended up, having to stay in a $60 a night pension, which is fine. But back then I was backpacking, and usually a hostel bed's like $10 to $20 a night. So, but once in a while I did have to do that. But most of the time I was able to just show up and just book a place. And often it will tell you how to get there, like which bus from the airport to get there. And I was trying to find the China Lonely Planet. I couldn't find it at the library, but yeah, I borrowed these all from the library. But I did find the Beijing one, and you will see that You know, in the description, they'll have Chinese characters, which was really helpful because when I was in Beijing, I took a bus from the airport to the hostel that was recommended. And it said, you know, take bus number 120. And I was so lost, and nobody on the bus, I don't think, spoke English. So, you know, it was kind of evening time. I'm with my backpack. I'm a foreigner in Beijing, China, and people were getting off of work. The bus was crowded. So I was in the bus for a while and I just felt I was lost. I didn't know where to get off. So I did get off and I did hail a cab. And I was able to show them, you know, the Chinese characters for the name of it. I don't know if it shows the address. Probably that shows the address, yeah. So I was able to get there, but again, as a backpacker, I wasn't taking taxis all the time. I was, you know, trying to do public transportation, depending on the country and what was easier, because sometimes traffic is bad. It's easier to take a subway or what have you. Anyway, but it was really difficult because, you know, it was hard to get there. One time I was in Shanghai. I think I took a train there. And I was on a bus trying to find my hotel or hostel, which was along the Bund or near the Bund. And there was an old man on the bus who started chatting to me in English. And he was really nice. And he said, "Oh, I know where you're going. I will take you there." So we got off the bus and we walked a few blocks and he dropped me off at the hostel or hotel. And then he asked me, he's like, "So since I took time out of my day, can you pay me some money?" You know, and I was like really shocked because I was this young woman backpacking solo and he was this old man, nicely dressed, and he's asking me for money. So it was kind of an awkward situation. But then another time when I was in Beijing, the washer in the hostel was broken. So I asked, you know, the front desk, where can I find a laundromat? And they were saying, "Oh, just go down this road and take a right and then take a left." And so I did, and you know, I got lost. It was so difficult. And you know, in Beijing, they have these old neighborhoods with these old, you know, streets and stuff. So I was really lost, and I finally found the place. And then the next day, when I tried to retrieve it, I got lost again. And you know, I'm walking around and around. I mean, it took me a long time, and I hopped into a cab, and I was trying to explain to them with not speaking any Chinese, any Mandarin, where I wanted to go. So we drove around and around. We finally found it, but it was really difficult. So, you know, another time is the lack of, you know, being able to speak the local language. I was in southern China, which is kind of famous for really unique foods, and I didn't want to eat any unique animals in my food. So in my Lonely Planet guidebook, it did say, it had like helpful phrases, and I would point to them and say, "I am vegetarian." Not that I am, but I really didn't want to eat any meat things. So I told them that, and I ordered some dumplings, and they, you know, I bit into it, and there was meat in it. So I was like, "Oh my God, what kind of animal am I eating here?" And I had to like ask them, like, "What's in here?" And then I had to go, "Bak bak, is it that?" Or, you know, I'm like making animal noises to find out, you know, moo or bark, bark, bark. I'm trying to figure out what animal it was. Luckily, it was just pork, I think. So, but it was just, you know, it's difficult not being able to communicate with people. And, you know, some of you know I'm trying to learn Spanish, or I speak Spanish fairly okay, intermediate, but I don't speak all those languages. So that was kind of a hassle. But now, you all know, we have this wonderful computer in our hands, a very powerful computer in our hands. So there's everything there. And the two most used apps is Google Maps and Google Translate. I even have them down below on my home screen. So you guys have probably, you know, used Google Maps, but it shows you kind of, you know, where you are in the world and what's near you. And you can also save offline maps. I highly recommend that because sometimes when you arrive in a new country, you don't, maybe you arrive there at a time where the shops are closed and you can't buy a SIM card at the airport. So it's a good idea to at least, you could download an offline map of the area, the region of the city. And I would, it doesn't give you, you know, turn by turn directions, but at least it'll show you, it'll have a blue dot on your screen. So while you're traveling, whether on a bus or taxi or whatever, at least you kind of know where you are. And so, and another thing is you can save a list of your favorite things. So here I have, let's see. Yeah, actually you could see offline maps. So you'll see different cities that I've been to recently, and it's really nice to be able to see that. And then my saved, where the heck is my saved stuff? Um, well, now I can't see my save. I do have a saved list, and it disappeared. Okay, let me try to type in. I was recently in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Okay, so here. So I have, sorry, all these things saved. Tons of restaurants and cafes and co-working spaces and just sites saved. So the nice thing is you can, well, there's a list of them. It's not showing up, but usually there's a list that you can look at. So obviously you guys know, hopefully, how to get directions somewhere. So I don't know, I just picked one location. I don't know, I think it's a cafe or something. So let's have directions from the Recoleta Cemetery. Okay, and the nice thing is, obviously it shows the driving directions, but it also shows the public transportation options. So it'll tell you the bus or the subway, to go. And this I've used in Tokyo, I've used all over Europe, and it's amazing how Google Maps has this real-time data. And then also, you can also, what's nice is you can get oops, it went off. I have to put another location in. Okay. Right, anyway, so here's just a walking direction from one restaurant to another. And the nice thing is it will tell you if it's mostly flat, or it'll tell you the elevation. So you kind of know, like, oh, it's not very far, but it's up a huge hill and we're in a hurry, so we'll take a taxi instead. So that's really helpful. And then obviously we have different views. You can look at, kind of the map view versus, let me go to map view versus the, the satellite view, all of that. It'll also show you if there's traffic, which is really nice, and street view. So you guys hopefully have seen that, but just in case you haven't. And then another nice thing is you can share a location. Okay, so here's a place, and then you go to share. So you could share it with one of your friends. You just click on it, or Messenger, or email, or send it in Facebook. So that's really nice. And then another nice thing is you can share your location. So let me see, where am I right now? And then, so here it shows where I am in the Tacoma, Washington area. And you can share, I think you click, yeah. So you click on location sharing. And the nice thing about it is if you're meeting a friend, maybe another Worldschooling parent at a park, and you could just share your location and they'll share theirs, and you can see the little blue dots coming to each other. So you just click new share, and then you can choose, right now it just has email addresses, who to send it to. But I think there's more options to share it. Yeah, you can share it, via Messenger or WhatsApp. So that is super, super helpful. And it's really nice because you don't have to just call them, where are you? I'm standing in front of the such and such. So that's really great. And then another option other than Google Maps that people use for driving is Waze, W-A-Z-E. So check that out. And then we have the wonderful Google Translate. So this I use quite a lot. I mean, I speak a bit of Spanish, so that helps. But when I was in Georgia, I don't speak a lick of Georgian, especially except for hello or thank you. Okay, so then you can type in your thing, or you could speak into it. So, for example, if I'm at a grocery store and I'm trying to find something there, you can just say, where is the Parmesan cheese? Okay, so Yeah, so it shows in the Georgian language, and then the nice thing is you turn it sideways. Look at, then they can read it really nice and big. So it really helps a lot. And then the other thing is you may or may not have seen the camera. Can you see the little camera there? So if you click on it, oh, actually, I want to do, I want to change the language because I do have this product. When I'm in a grocery store and I can't read, you know, what's on the product or even like the little label there, I will put in the language and then click camera. Okay, so I'm gonna do it just to make sure it works. Oh, it says it's doing it from, that's not good. Korean to Georgian. No, I want it Korean to English. Okay, that's better. All right, so not sure if you can see it, but it will, you might be able to read that it says brown rice. I'm not sure. Sun something. So it really helps. And this I've used when I'm you know, shopping or signs on the street, or even trying to use the washing machine in my Airbnb. It's really, really helpful. I remember when I first moved to Spain in 2001, I didn't speak much Spanish and I was trying to use a washer. And I didn't know I couldn't read like wash versus spin cycle, whatever. So I had to go look up on my little dictionary the words help me. And I knocked on my neighbor's door, ayúdame, and then they had to come and I had to point. It was really embarrassing. Anyway, so those are some of the tips. I use Google Maps and Google Translate all the time when I'm traveling. I don't feel as stressed as I did before. It's not as awkward asking. I mean, it's good to ask people for directions because that way you get to meet people and have interesting experiences. But sometimes when you're traveling with kids, they're cranky, they want to go find your hotel, whatever it is, your Airbnb. So it's kind of nice to have these apps. And again, I still like reading these books, but they are really heavy. And I think I forgot to mention that when I was in, I bought this, but then I didn't buy the other ones until, you know, I was about to go. So when I was in London, I bought a Lonely Planet for India. And then I did see like used bookstores, so sometimes I would do that. But yeah, because otherwise carrying 27 of these or 5 of these or 10 of these, it would have been way too heavy. So this is awesome. It's very lightweight and it's a powerful little computer. And those 2 apps help me so much. And just seriously, I am so grateful for them because I remember how difficult it was in the olden days when I had to use guidebooks and, you know, maps. And I didn't, you know, travel with a cell phone then because I had a cell phone back in San Francisco, but it's, you know, back then the international roaming fees were really high and they didn't have Google Fi, or T-Mobile didn't have an international plan yet. Also, you know, I couldn't really take out a SIM card and get a new one for each country I went to. I have an unlocked phone. And, you know, those things just didn't exist. They were really difficult, and you had to use public phones and the international calling cards to call home or wherever. I did go to internet cafes a lot, and I did type my e-journal. I called it my e-journal. So I would like handwrite in a journal at cafes and then type it up and email it to like 100 of my friends. And then I was meeting other travelers and I would add them to my email list. So eventually it kind of became a blog, I guess, like the first type of blog. And halfway through my trip, I did buy a Casio digital camera. It's one of the first ones out there, but the little SD card only could fit 24 photos. And I had to go take photos and go to an internet cafe, upload them onto a GeoCities site. I had to shrink the photos because otherwise it wouldn't load, the page wouldn't load. And then I had to delete it from my SD card and take more photos. And I was scouring the electronics markets in Bangkok or wherever I was for more SD cards. And sometimes I would have to put them on floppy disks. It was like so crazy, all the work you had to do. And now my phone, another thing obviously that I love is Google Photos or whatever, or I do backup with Apple. But I can, you know, literally tens of thousands of photos I can take and have uploaded to the cloud. That's another one. So anyway, hope those were helpful to you. If you haven't already, please join my Facebook group, Trailblazing Families. Actually, it's called Worldschooling Traveling Digital Nomad Trailblazing Families. So please join that group if you haven't already. In January, I am launching a 12-week course for parents who want to travel the world with their kids. So I will be helping them learn how to travel confidently with their kids and all the different ways that they can world school so everyone can live their life of their dreams and raise global citizens. So let me check. I think I have I have a question. As a digital nomad, what country do you think is the best for connecting with others? Good question. Well, Colette, you're funny because I met you in one of the top countries. I met you in Thailand, right? So yeah, I mean, digital nomads and world schoolers are kind of, there's a lot of crossover sometimes, but not always. For example, Berlin is a very popular digital nomad area, but not so much for families because homeschooling is not legal there. So we tend to avoid like living in Germany for a while. But you know, you've already lived in Mexico, and Medellin, Colombia is popular. Tbilisi, Georgia is popular right now. There's a ton of Russians who have, you know, escaped their country because they don't believe in what they're doing. So they're camping out in Tbilisi, and the prices have doubled. Like I was able to get a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a fairly central area with a view of the city for I think $450 a month, and I'm sure it's double now. So yeah, nomadlist.com is a good one to look at for all the popular digital nomad hubs. Obviously, Bali is popular. Kyiv, Ukraine used to be popular before what happened. And now Bansko, Bulgaria has become really popular. There's a co-working space there, and they now have created co-living spaces. And it's funny, so when a lot of places become popular for digital nomads, the digital nomads who have kids, we start showing up too. So Bansko has become a world schooling hub, and my daughters and I are going there for the second winter in a row because it's an organized world school hub. But yeah, I mean, I think Istanbul is popular. I mean, different parts of Europe, Tenerife, the Canary Islands, Mallorca. It kind of depends also on the time of year because some people like to get away from the cold, you know, when in the winter and go someplace else. Buenos Aires is popular for digital nomads, not as much for world schoolers, but I think little by little it'll become more popular. Ecuador, Quito, or Cuenca, Ecuador are very popular for expats and digital nomads and world schooling families. And different places in, you know, Mexico, Playa del Carmen, Mexico City, super popular right now for digital nomads. Trying to look at all the continents. Yeah, Southeast Asia. I mean, typically if the weather's good and if there's fun things to do and if the cost of living is low, that tends to be, you know, a hot spot for digital nomads. So thank you, Colette, for that question. And everyone, again, if you haven't already, please join my Facebook group and reach out to me if you are interested in just even checking out my 12-week program if you're a newbie to world schooling, or if you are experienced but maybe you're still trying to figure out the education bit. I will soon be doing a video on the 6 popular ways to world school your kids. So reach out to me if you want to be on the waiting list for that. I'm still working on finishing that. I did recently reformat and add to a 200 plus income ideas to fund family travel and world schooling. It's now up to 235 ideas. So reach out to me if you want me to email you that PDF. Okay, so all right, thank you everyone for joining my Facebook Live. I'll be reposting this on YouTube, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye.